Hello and welcome to all of you on your own channel, that's Mudabbir's Biology Club. Today our topic shall be the evidences in favor of evolution. So we shall discuss what are the different types of the evidences which have been put forth to support the Darwinism or the Darwinist theory of natural selection. Now we will see that the first point in the Darwinist theory, that is the overproduction. Overproduction. Now there's no need to explain this thing that we are every now and then we are witnessing the overproduction of the organisms. Every species, every organism, every individual produces many offsprings of its own type that could not possibly survive. And this is a what we call as reality, as has been discussed by the Malthus, that populations increase in the geometric ratio, whereas there are limitations of the food, space, and all other natural resources. So we say that we are witnessing the overproduction, or we are witnessing the prodigal nature of the species. So this is an evidence in favor of the evolution, as we are ourselves witnessing this thing. Now the another thing is that which Darwin discussed, that is the competition. The competition which Darwin discussed, this is also obvious in the nature. We'll see, as there are constraints of food, space, and all other resources. So the different organisms need to compete with one another for obtaining these resources and for availing the facility of these resources. So the competition is also very much obvious, and it's also an evidence in favor of the Darwinian concept or in favor of the Darwinism. Now there's a third point in the Darwinian concept, that is the variation. The variations are so much abundant in living organisms that no two living organisms are exactly same in terms of their genetic makeup. So the variations, as have been discussed by the Darwin, they are being seen that what we call as no two organisms are alike in terms of the variations. Every organism has some particular variations. Maybe those variations may not be useful always, they may be sometimes harmful, but no two individuals are alike in terms of their variations, and these two is an evidence in favor of the Darwinian concept or in favor of the Darwinist theory of natural selection. Now we will see there are some other evidences in favor of the Darwinian theory. For example, if we see the artificial selection, if we see artificial selection and natural selection are parallel to one another. Say, by controlled breeding experiments, we have generated many different varieties of the plants, of different crop plants, and we have also developed many different breeds of the animals by controlled breeding experiments. All this comes under the domain of the artificial selection. So this has also been documented by many of the great scientists, that if human beings can produce different varieties and different breeds of the plants and animals respectively by controlled selection process, that's known as artificial selection, why cannot nature produce by natural selection different species from a single species which has infinite resources and infinite time at its disposal? So this is also an evidence in favor of the evolution. We say that if we are able to produce the different species, different varieties and different breeds of the plants and animals by controlled breeding experiments by artificial selection, why cannot nature by natural selection produce different species which has infinite time and infinite resources at its disposal? Now there's the another case which makes the Darwinist theory much more stronger, that is the case of the mimicry, which we call as mimicry. Mimicry. Now we see that the mimic always mimics the model, and when we analyze this thing in terms of the evolution, we have to believe that such things are not coincidence. Such things have evolved gradually over the course of millions and billions of years. For example, let me take the example of an insect which is known as calima. Calima. Calima is commonly known as leaf insect. This insect is commonly known as leaf insect because this insect mimics the leaves of some trees. So this is mimicry. The leaf insect mimics the leaves of many trees and it appears to be a leaf. This insect appears to be a leaf, and this process is what we call as mimicry. Can you imagine or can you say that such process, such very complex processes have developed by what we call as the coincidence? No, they have not developed by the coincidence. There has been evolution from millions and billions of years. There has been parallel evolution of those of the mimic and that of the model. Mimic is the organism which mimics another organism. The organism to which it mimics is known as model. So there has been in practice the parallel evolution of the mimic and model over past millions and billions of years, and this has led to such what we call as correlation between the mimic and the model. So it's not any coincidence. It also makes us to believe that evolution has occurred as is advocated by this theory of Darwin. Now there is one more point over here, that is the what we call as the position of the these nectaries in the flowers and the size of the proboscis of the insects which are extracting nectar from the nectaries of these flowers. We say that there is correlation between proboscis proboscis size of insects. There's correlation between proboscis size of insects and position of nectaries, position of nectaries, nectaries in flowers from which they are extracting the nectar. So this can also not be taken as a coincidence, as we see that the insects which are extracting nectar from a particular this flower, they have the proboscis of that much length so that it can reach to the nectar of that very flower. So these things are not a coincidence. It is due to the parallel evolution which has occurred over many generations of these insects and these flowering plants, which has led to such a complete what we call as synchronization, and this makes us to believe that basically evolution has occurred. So these are some of the evidences in favor of the Darwinian concept of the evolution. So we shall again revise that the overproducing nature of the organisms is obvious. Competition, as has been discussed by the Darwin, it is also obvious. The variations, it is quite obvious that no two individuals belong to the same species. They too have variations, and uh, we say that artificial selection by artificial selection process we can generate the different breeds and the varieties. And why cannot nature generate by the natural selection different species? And similarly after that, lastly we discussed about the correlation between the mimic and model, as has been seen in the Calima leaf insect. It resembles the leaf of certain these plants, and this also cannot be a coincidence. And similarly, there is a strong correlation between the position of nut trees in the flowers and the size of the proboscis of the insects which are feeding up or which are feeding from the nectar taken from the nectaries of these very flowers. All this cannot be coincidence. It is basically a reality what has been documented by the Darwin in his theory of natural selection. Hope that you have understood what are the evidences in favor of the Darwin's concept of the evolution. For other videos, you can subscribe your own channel. That's Mudabbir's Biology Club. Thank you.